If there was a bribe or if there was some kind of personal agenda or something.
It definitely wasn't to be carrying.
Talked to her one day at a meeting, and he said hi to her and stuck out his hand, and she turned and wouldn't talk to him. She was getting ready to retire. A few weeks ago, she said, I'm getting ready to retire, and there's a few things I want to do before I retire.
You think you were on the list?
I think I was on the list. I don't think you go up to total strangers and say, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I want you to know what I did as a child, and just share everything about your past.
From Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. I am so sorry. Today is a Duggar day, and there's just so much going on this case with Josh Duggar, and I just don't have time to bring you other tea. There was a lot of court filings. I've already talked about a couple. One where Josh Duggar blames Trump, which is the most ridiculous argument thus far. The second one was about him wanting to throw out photos, and now this one is related to who Josh is really blaming for everything that happened at his property or at his work. So there was a very long document that was filed by his team, and they were requesting that the case be dismissed. They claim that the police, in this case, Department of Homeland Security, went to his property, did a search of the property, and then following the property search, they did some interviews with individuals connected to him that could maybe provide evidence or testimony or witness statements to police. So this was likely done as an attempt to sort of sift through who could be the culprit in this case. They spoke to 3 people, and he wants to pin it on one. There's also 2 others that they spoke to. Now, what I find the most horrible in this is that I think at least 2 of his brothers might have been interviewed as a part of this. We know that at least a few of his brothers helped out at his car lot, and knowing that his brothers might have been interviewed as a part of this case and that Josh might potentially be blaming one of them makes me feel really sick. Like, how much worse could Josh be than to try to pin this on one of his brothers? Now, in this filing, he doesn't necessarily try to pin it on his brothers. Instead, he's trying to pin it on a employee. And here's the thing, this is the Shady ex-con. So I knew when I reported that to you that I was not lying because I trusted my source. And my source had told me that Jim Bob was telling people that there was this employee that worked at the property. He had a criminal history, had been released from prison, and because of that release from prison, he was given a chance by Josh, and that Josh made a mistake by giving him a chance, and this is the guy that downloaded everything. So the Shady ex-con story was born. Also, the Trump and Biden conspiracy was born. I've already told you about the Trump conspiracy, and now I'm going to tell you about the Shady ex-con conspiracy. Josh admits that after his property had been raided effectively by the Department of Homeland Security, they conducted interviews. During this process, they interviewed this guy, and it says this: HSI interviewed witness number 1 on December 16th, 2019, approximately 1 month after applying for and executing a search warrant on the car lot. Witness number 1 admitted to investigators he worked at the car lot at various times, and that on several occasions he even stayed at the car lot overnight without Duggar's knowledge or permission. HSI expressly noted in its official report that it was interviewing witness number 1 as a person of interest. During this interview, HSI obtained witness number 1's verbal and written consent to search the cellular phone in his possession at the time of the interview. Based on HSI's official report, the cellular phone was examined for evidence of CP by SA Aycock and Special Agent Faulkner, with negative results. Witness number 1 admitted to using and viewing his phone to view adult adult erotica through the websites he accessed through the internet on his cell phone, and when asked by federal agents, he denied viewing CP. HSI preserved no evidence whatsoever from the search of witness number one's phone, including its contents and metadata. So at the very bottom of this, there's a footnote that says, given the nature of these proceedings, Duggar is using the pseudonyms witness 1, 2, and 3 in lieu of the individual's names. However, Duggar has no objection to identifying each of them by name if the court prefers. So he's protecting these identities, which makes me feel like these people could be connected to the Duggars. So they are trying to say that this guy was living on the property without Josh's permission. He admitted to looking at content with adults, denied looking at stuff related to kids, and then when the police or the HSI people looked at his phone, they didn't find anything on his phone, and so therefore they moved on. But it doesn't end there. They also interviewed 2 others who they were read Miranda rights of. So the second interview was on December 20th. So 4 days later, on December 20th, 2019, investigators interviewed witness number 2 in connection with the investigation. Witness number 2 was read his Miranda rights before being interviewed. During the interview, witness number 2 provided verbal and written consent for investigators to search his cell phone. Based on the official HSI report, HSI CFA forensic examiner Marshall Kennedy conducted an examination of the cell phone with negative results. Despite the examination being conducted by the government's computer forensic examiner, HSI preserved no evidence whatsoever from the search of witness number 2's phone, including its contents and metadata. So the second witness was read Miranda rights. And this one, again, nothing was found on the phone when they did an evaluation, but they're mad because they're saying the police didn't save any contents or metadata. On November 8th, the same day that HSI executed the search warrant of the car lot, and 4 days after he signed the affidavit in support of the search warrant, they interviewed witness number 3 in connection with the investigation. Witness number 3 was also read his Miranda rights before being interviewed. The official report HSI prepared contains a section entitled Investigator's Note, capitalized in original. That section states HSI Computer Forensic Analysis conducted a forensic examination of the phone at Wholesale Motor Cars, which revealed no evidence of criminal activity. Despite the examination being conducted by more than one government computer forensic analyst, the HSI preserved no evidence whatsoever from the search of this phone. So they are basically saying that because they did not preserve any evidence that could potentially be exculpatory, meaning that would help him get off, or could point the arrow at somebody else as being the person who did this, they want the whole case dismissed. And they're also saying that they don't have any evidence of, like, they're claiming that a search of the phone on the field is not enough to determine whether or not a phone has criminal activity. My guess, and this is just my guess, is that they had no search warrants for these phones. There was no compelling evidence for them at that time to believe that these witnesses were likely the person doing this, because Josh's stuff had already at this point been taken. It's hard to know and believe that 5 weeks later, perhaps they had some indication of what had been found on Josh's phone. Maybe they knew that there was photos of his hands. Maybe they knew that it was Josh that was sitting there. Maybe they already had the evidence that they needed, but they wanted to see if these other people had any sort of like information to provide. Were they in a conspiracy together? So these interviews could have been done without a search warrant, meaning they couldn't just take the person's phone. And if there was nothing compelling them to take the phone, they can't take the phone. And if there wasn't enough evidence to get a search warrant, they can't take the phone. But because of this, they believe that they just completely went over and did not actually really evaluate this person number 1. And they think it's bad faith. They say that they characterized witness number 1 as an individual, as a person of interest. And a trained computer forensic analysis clearly knows that the cursory review of an electronic signature device coupled with a note that is no evidentiary value does nothing to preserve the evidence. So they're saying, well, you interviewed him as a person of interest, and yet you still didn't save his data. And so therefore, you in bad faith didn't get this evidence for us, and this could actually potentially get him to be, cleared. You violated his rights again. Nobody's rights are more violated than Josh Duggar, and they want this to be dismissed because of it. Based on the foregoing, the court should dismiss this case based on the government's failure to preserve potentially exculpatory evidence. At a minimum, this court should hold an evidentiary hearing to determine what can be determined based on the searches performed and to explore the possibility of alternative remedies. So I feel like this motion to dismiss is actually more of a Hail Mary, not necessarily that they think it's going to be dismissed, because at the very end they say at a minimum they should do an evidentiary hearing to determine what they potentially might have missed and explore other options. And again, my guess isn't that they believed this person was actually the culprit. My guess is they didn't have enough evidence to believe they were the culprit, nor to obtain a search warrant. They can't actually take someone's phone, like I said, without a search warrant. They can't hold someone under probable cause if they don't have enough evidence. And if they don't have probable cause for a search warrant, they're not going to get one. And this group here is obsessed with them getting everything done properly and by the T's. They have already blamed Trump. They have blamed the agents. There's an entire motion to suppress that takes aim at the credibility of the agents in this case and how they lied and filed false documents with the court. They are basically alleging that the agents committed perjury and lied and misled judges. They are pointing this at some sort of massive governmental corruption to frame Josh and to ignore everyone else. We'll get into that motion later. But for now, the smoking gun or the shady ex-con has been revealed. We don't know the name at this point, but they did say if the government wants to use their names, they can, and they don't object. So it'll be up to the government in this case to respond and whether or not they say the names. And if one of those names is one of the family members or say a Caldwell, we'll have some thinking to do here about why some relationships were falling apart with the Duggars not long after this raid happened. All right, you guys, tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Bye, guys.